Hello, welcome to episode 8 of JagaVision. We are doing these sessions every Thursday at 1 p.m. We enjoy a selection of teas with some guests, and before that, I generally make myself a tea and share it with you. Today's guests, we're going to have Sister Speak. Coming on the show again. She joins us every week. And then our guest that's going to be new this week is going to be Serge Yager. Looking forward to having Serge on. Serge is the one who taught me how to use the broadcasting software that I've been using for the JagaVision episodes. He's a content creator. You can check him out on twitch.tv/Serge Yager. Sherri Anne is the lead singer of Sister Speak, a band that we've been tea sponsors of for the last 6 years. Really nice to have her on the show regularly as well. Looking forward to a good session with those two. They'll be joining us in about 10 minutes, but for the time being, figured I would drink this sample that I have. So I have a Yabukita cultivar from a farm in Wadzuka, Japan. What's interesting about this particular sample is the tea has been slightly roasted and it's a senja, so that's kind of uncommon. Now, the person who sent it to me can speak English, so it might just be that they were talking about a common phenomenon in Japanese tea called hiire, which is when there's a little bit of a toasting of the leaves after. Pretty fruity, aromatic. I don't know if you can see the leaves, but put them out on a plate here. Generally, when I'm making a Japanese sencha, I like to work with 1 gram for every 30 mils. So I'm going to use 6 grams for 180 grams of water. See how that does. So you can see the leaves look pretty good. There's a nice, been nicely separated. There's a little bit of particulate, more than I'm used to seeing out of a premium green in out of Kyoto. Not a problem if this was steamed a little bit more. The reason why they're broken up a little bit might be because of that finish firing process. So yeah, it looks a little unusual for a Kyoto selection. I like to, generally speaking, in Kyoto, I like to steep with 65 degrees centigrade water. Today, though, because these leaves look a little bit more broken up and a little bit darker than I'm used to seeing out of the region, I'm going to brew with what I would use for anything that you get in Japan outside of Kyoto, which is 70 degrees. So dropping 180 grams of water on. Steeping in a kyusu, a Japanese teapot. You can see it has the handle out the side. That helps for a one-handed pour, in my opinion, although that's not technically the way it's supposed to be done. But what's nice is that with a lot of teapots, when you're brewing Japanese greens, they're not as ideal because the leaves will plug up the filter, and you don't get as nice of an extraction. Because you're not able to get the liquid out fast enough. And whenever we're selecting a teapot, we're really interested in a 4-second drop time. 4-second drop time just helps us have a lot more control over the extraction time. Let's see how that smells. Oh, it smells lovely. Okay. So this is a 2019 harvest. And really this is the time of year where we'd be about to get samples of our Japanese 2020s. They're harvesting generally at the end of May, early June, but they're only really ready for drinking a month later because we have to get samples in, we have to feel that we're happy with them. And I mean, in Japan though, you get people enjoying their leaves a lot later. Just had a question here. What difference do you find from brewing at a lower temperature? So when I brew with lower temperatures, I get more of a focus on the umami or the sweetness, and I don't get as much flavor structure. When I'm brewing and I can have a little bit more acidity or a little bit more bitters in the cup, I feel like I've created or I've extracted flavors in a way that I have a nice flavor structure. That answers that question. Well, that smells really nice. Yeah, this is definitely not roasted like a hojicha. I think that the farmer who sent me this, what they meant was just that finish firing. Oh, that's very nice. Get really smooth. I'm so fascinated by the process of finish firing a tea. I think there's just so much that happens, and it's a really not really talked about part of the process. I think a lot of even though it's the norm in Japan and in many parts of the world to heat the leaves even after they've finished production, just before putting into the package, really, it's not really talked about, and I think they're almost embarrassed in some regions. They're like, oh, am I cheating here? But it's so normal that it's actually just an artesian process, in my opinion. So, and finish firing looks like coffee roasting, really. It's just done at a much lower temperature, like 96, 100 degrees centigrade. For like, depending on the leaf size, anywhere from 3 minutes to 12 minutes. Roast curves are important, just like in coffee. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. Yabukita from Wazuka. This has been shaded. It's also organic. It's really hard to find good organic tea out of Japan, out of many parts of the world. But organic green teas, you're just really hard pressed to create a selection that is memorable, that has been put together with care, and this is actually tasting along those lines. Like, this is actually quite lovely. We do come across them here and there, and we do really pounce on them when we find them, so this could be one of those opportunities. So I've left my scale tared. Looks like the water absorption was 21 grams. I always find senchas absorb a lot more liquid than a lot of teas. So if I hadn't tared the scale, it's a good mental note to self that the next time I brew this tea, or really senchas in general, I should, instead of 180 grams, be brewing with 160 grams of water. Second infusion, generally for a Japanese sencha, is just essentially a wash. You're only really giving it 5 seconds, and you can see I'm getting some beautiful color. Get that last golden drop. That smells really good. I don't know if you can see the color very cleanly there, but it's really, really beautiful. Take another sip of that. Noticeably hotter, of course, because it hasn't been sitting there for a minute. But yeah, I'm used to the second steep being almost thoroughly unenjoyable when I'm drinking tea from Kyoto. The Kyoto region does a really light steaming process, and as a result, a lot of the time the tea tastes, a lot of it is in the nose. You don't get a lot of body, and I think that's on purpose. They really want a floral, very fragrant tea. Then I think, the farmers feel that, or the people producing the teas at the end process, not always the farmers, actually more commonly not the farmers, it is really, yeah, I really enjoy a little bit more richness. So I find that although I love the region, I'm always a little bit worried because I know that my selections from Kyoto are going to be a lot less forgiving, and I have to be really careful with brew temperatures, brew times. So I would say for brew temperatures, you should really be looking at around a 60 degrees centigrade for something from Kyoto, but this one really held up well. Some more questions here. For me, that's an extraordinary quick brew time. Yeah, if you're brewing your green teas and it really depends on the tea. So if you're doing a parched green out of China, you probably 2 minutes at 80 degrees is a good amount of time. If you're brewing your green tea like you're brewing crimson or a black tea, boiling water, 3 minutes, you're destroying your tea. So you really want to be careful that you're definitely not doing that. You want to make sure you're working with lower water temperatures, and you can adjust the temperatures depending on the region. I like to use a temperature variable kettle. This lets me set my temperature. If you don't have a temperature variable kettle, you can always use the vessel transfer method, knowing that boiling water is 100 degrees centigrade, and each time you move or transfer vessels, you're going to drop 10 degrees. What do you do with excess tea leaves after the package has been opened? I drink them. So they're you want to definitely store them well though. Put them into a tin, and then it really helps to make sure that you go through them quickly enough. Once you've opened up your packages, you want to make sure that you're at about, I would say, maybe 3 weeks max that you're going through them. Looks like one of our guests has joined us. Serge, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Hi, friend.
It's really great to have you. I was explaining to our viewers before you joined that you are basically my sensei when it comes to live streaming.
Well, you've taught me everything I know about tea, so helping each other out here.
No, it's lovely to have you on the show. And for our viewers, me and Serge met actually quite a long time ago. He was roasting coffee at the time, and since then he's definitely put in some time at there was another cafe he was working for here in Victoria, and then how many years ago now did you switch to doing mostly content production?
So in 2013, my partner and I decided to quit our jobs and travel the world to try and find a new way. It's like working for a small business for a long time. Passion can only take you so far, and I loved coffee, but I didn't see a career there, unfortunately.
Right.
So 2013 would be the departure from coffee. Full-time content creation has been a hobby for about 7 years and full-time for about 2 years now.
Wow. Okay. So full-time 2 years, hobby 7 years. And I mean, I wasn't even aware that you were doing this kind of thing. To me, you were always the fellow coffee and tea enthusiast, so we could kind of geek out on flavors, and I really just assumed more involvement in that industry. So it was something of a surprise to me when you invited invited JagaSilk to Desert Bus, which is a charity that you're a part of. Do you want to talk a little bit about that charity as well, just so our viewers are aware of what's going on there, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you do right now as in terms of content providing?
Sure. So Desert Bus for Hope is an online 24/7 is a weird way to phrase it, but internet telethon where we play the world's worst video game for as long as we can while we wait for, I don't know, donations to come in. All donations go towards an organization called Child's Play Charity, which gets toys and games to sick kids in hospitals all over the world. The formula is kind of weird. So last year, for example, we went for about 160 hours straight. So we went 24 hours a day for a week for that duration of time. And lifetime, I think we've raised like $4 or $5 million. I don't know. The numbers, it's weird.
Blows my mind. Yeah, that's great.
I've been involved with it a little too long, so I should probably know the numbers better for interviews and stuff like that. Yeah, and it's one of these events where people are like, okay, yeah, you play a video game, sure. Okay, 160 hours in a room, you probably smell. Okay, wait. How much money?
Yeah, millions of dollars? What's going on?
Can you say that all to me again? I need to catch up. And I've been absolutely thrilled to have JagaSilk involved.
Cool.
In Desert Bus the past couple of years. You've been there for 4 years now, I think. You've done the live matcha presentation and like a tea hour for everybody. And in addition to that, you provide tea for the volunteers to drink. Because when you're working for 160 hours, caffeine goes a long way in helping people out.
It sure does.
I've always appreciated your support.
No, that's lovely to hear. Thank you, Serge. Yeah, no, it's been really a joy every year. People want to check out, I believe there's archive videos online of the conversations that have taken place. If you want to go to the Desert Bus YouTube channel and check things out there. And it's always lovely. I've always been really impressed at how good you are at interviewing. You bring the topic along. We have conversations. You ask questions that make me feel like you're really listening, and they're not like just kind of some sort of bland, pre-prepared something. It's a really amazing skill that you have, man. And I feel like I need to watch more of those, more of your work than I have already, and to learn even more. So yeah, it's lovely to learn from you as well.
So great comment in the chat. 5.2 million lifetime.
Yeah, I saw that. 5.2 million. That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Big hearts. And lots of people know you. And
Well, over 6 million now. That's out of date.
over 6 million. Is that? That's hilarious.
They're just gonna keep making the numbers bigger.
Wow.
20.
Yeah.
Can I get 30, please?
Yeah, it was just
Children, let's go.
It's and it's for kids. It's such a wonderful project. Do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about what you're doing right now? Like, what is it that you do? You're at twitch.tv/Serge Yager.
Yeah. So I live this weird life right now where I get to be a full-time content creator. I mean, nowadays, especially, people are aware of YouTubers and Twitch streamers. And I am in this incredibly privileged position where this is what I get to do for my living. All my money comes from generous people online who are like, yes, play more Minecraft. I'll support you doing that. I don't get it. And I consider myself very lucky. So 7 days a week, especially now that the current situation is happening, I work every single day and I focus on family-friendly content. So Minecraft, city builders. I was playing Civilization earlier today.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I won't say non-violent content because unfortunately sometimes video games do have some level of death into it, but I don't play shooter games. I don't play that sort of stuff. It's typically a focus on, I want to make a pretty city. I want to make a pretty house in Minecraft.
Nice.
I want to make a pretty volcano and maybe somebody falls into it. I don't know. It's just silly stuff like that.
But that was not the intent of the volcano.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Nice. Okay, very cool. Well, so that makes me, I mean, kind of backtracking a little bit here, but that means that if you've been doing the hobby level of this for 7 years, professionally, where it's your only revenue stream for 2 years, how long have I known you? Like,
so
is it almost 10 years or more than 10 years?
It's got to be longer than that.
Wow. Okay.
So I've been with Joe for over 11 years.
Okay. Wow.
And I started working for Discovery Coffee in the roastery very early in, okay, all right, maybe it's I exaggerate when I say it's way more than 10 years, 10 or 11 years,
okay.
Yes.
Amazing. So we've known each other for a decade, so awesome.
Yeah, easy peasy there.
So yeah, and that means we've known you pretty early on because we opened up the Tea Bar in 2009, the company in 2005, so you've probably known us for most of the time that the Tea Bar is open, you and I. So you and Joe.
You were doing wholesale before you had a cafe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think well, I've been in Jago. The first time we met, I was sitting about where I am here, if this was a chair, across the bar from you,
yes.
And you would have been there.
Amazing.
And it would have been for early tea training when all the Discovery staff, when we started carrying your product, came in and you started teaching people.
Amazing.
And that's what blew my mind. You're just like, I mean, obviously you don't smoke, but I'm just picturing like a deep drag of a cigarette. You're just like, all tea comes from the same plant, Camellia sinensis. And I'm like, whoa.
Nice.
You know, orange pico? That's just a part of the leaf. It's just
all these mind-blowing. You know, we actually, that particular session, there was a fellow who came in and was taking photographs and did an article from what are they called? There's a famous coffee blog, Spudge. Thank you.
Yeah. Anya was friends with them, and that I was all like, the Sprudge people? There's only two of them at that time. There was one who worked on the East Coast, one who worked on the West Coast. They did all the articles there, and obviously Sprudge Report has grown much larger since. But that was pretty intense.
Yeah, no, it was really cool, and he wrote an article that got featured in the New York Times. So there was like pictures of the Discovery session that you were at in the New York Times. Isn't that crazy?
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was pretty wild. We have it up on our website if people want to check it out. I think it's that might actually date the time when we would be able to. There we go. We can backtrack. Yeah.
To the first time we met.
Yeah,
All right.
that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, the first time we met, we were in the New York Times.
I mean, that's how most of my friends meet, really.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here.
That's right. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So today, the plan is we're going to be making some Darjeelings. And I wanted to sort of make tea, continue the conversation as we're making tea.
Heck yeah.
We're going to have Sister Speak join us. She finishes her show at 1 o'clock. She's not always right here on the 1:15 mark. So if
Sure.
you just excuse me one more moment here, I'm gonna quickly make a phone call to her to make sure that she's knows that we're on, because things can get distracted for these crazy musician folk, right? Okay, there we go. All right. So before we get into making some tea, you want to talk to us a little bit about what's going on with you and COVID-19, man? Like, how's this crisis playing out for you? You like a YouTube? I ask a lot of cafe owners, and they're like telling me like how they set up their spaces and how different everything is. But yeah, it's what happens to the blogger who your livelihood is at home, but it must still feel like fairly, I don't know, like not antisocial, but you know what I mean? Like,
I'm way busier than I've kind of ever been. And I mean, you never want to say that the apocalypse is why business is good.
Right.
But in a weird thing, when you're in the content creation thing, more people are at home, more people are looking for escapes, more people are looking for distractions. And a lot of people are turning to Twitch, where I am. They're turning to YouTube, and they're turning for ways to sort of find some positivity in a space where things aren't all that positive right now. And I mean, I'm working 7 days a week. I'm probably working like 50 to 60 hours a week. And I'm not leaving the house, so it's not hard. I don't feel like I'm straining myself. I don't feel like I'm pushing myself. I'm just really happy to be able to provide some peace of mind to some people who are looking for it right now.
Right.
But that, of course, being said, I'm only able to do this because of the support of my partner.
Right.
I mean, my partner, Jo, is super supportive. She takes care of, she'll bring me coffee or tea. She'll be like, I hear you coughing from the other room. Let me get you something for your throat. And like honeydew magically appear beside me. So it's not something I could do alone. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm safe. I'm healthy. I'm working a ton. And one of the very few stories I've heard of a business that hasn't been negatively impacted from this.
Amazing. No, that's really nice to hear, actually. Because we've just been joined by Sister Speak, Sherri Anne, and she's had definitely a very different experience with COVID-19. I mean, and as I'm sure all musicians have. So it's nice to hear this story that you have, actually, you have more viewers. People are like, you bring some joy. You're such a joyful person. So I imagine that people that watch your show get a good hit of that. And a shout out to Jo too, for sure. Like, holy crap. Yeah, that's, she's an amazing individual too. So you got to give her a big hug from the Jaga Silk when you get a moment. And Sherri Anne, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much. Hello, both of you.
So this is Serge. Serge, this is Sherri Anne.
Hi, Serge.
Serge.
Nice to meet you.
Serge was just telling us about his about what he's been doing during the crisis. He's a content provider, so I mean, his job is actually, there's a positive element to this story, is that he actually is busier than he was before, rather than.
Wow.
And we do hear that from actually our grocery store customers too. Grocery is just like crazy in terms of how busy they've gone. And before we continue this conversation, I just want to shout out to the chat. Like, amazing how much participation we're getting this round. So love the comments. Thank you very much. Somebody just mentioned that the New York Times article was March 2011. So that would have meant that the event where I met you then would have been the winter before that, because it took a while for it to actually get into the New York Times. So yeah. So there we go. Sherri Anne, you want to tell Serge a little bit about what's been happening in your neck of the woods, and tell our viewers? I mean, some of them have heard about it before, but Serge has definitely not, and we'd love you to let them know what challenges COVID-19 has presented for you.
Yeah. Well, basically, it all happened in the middle of a tour. I was in California on with a whole string of shows, and then everything was canceled within like 2 days. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. My band is split between BC and California, so it makes it really hard right now with the border being closed to even consider playing together. So everything's gone virtual. I've been doing live streams at noon every Thursday. People can tune in there, and that's been really fun. And then maybe we'll work on recording something with the band, like remotely, because it's just I just have no idea when we'll reunite. It's really a weird feeling. I'm in this mind space to just take it easy. It is interesting though. Like, I certainly haven't been bored for a second. There's so much to catch up on and so much to do if you have your own music project or business. There's just so much. So I certainly haven't been bored or anything like that. It's just taking a different direction. And I found it to be really fun to do the online stuff, and also had some more time to write some new music, so that's been a plus. I just miss my band a lot.
No, that's it's been really your shows every Thursday have been really fun. And so people who are watching or in the chat, you should go check out Sister Speak. Patreon.com/sisterspeak is a good place to. It's like $1 to watch all these archive shows. They're lovely. You can also watch them for free on Facebook Live, Instagram every Thursday at 12, right before our show. And then every first Saturday of the month, you're doing the ones on Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes, the first Saturday of the month. Oh, there's the door. The doorbell just went, and the dogs are barking.
Nice. Okay. So nice. Hello.
Sorry.
That's Kate and Arwen. So yeah, Serge, she actually had a tour to Costa Rica canceled in like a 24-hour time period, and
that's true.
And racing. Sorry, go ahead.
Any type of artist that's reliant on like a live show right now, it's got to be live. Live is such a weird way, because obviously we're in front of a live audiences right now, but going to a venue, because I can imagine, especially as a musician, the difference of performing in front of a live audience versus performing in a screen has got to be so hard.
You know, it hasn't been too hard, to be honest. Just, I've noticed, like, I just kind of I started them because I was antsy to play live, so I just kind of pretend it's a live show, and it's a little different. It's a little different, but there's like we kind of made it unique because we have tea every time, and then we have guests, and then dance to like records at the end, and I just dance like ridiculous dancing, like not like trained dancing. So it's just been like a time to just be goofy for like an hour.
Oh, very fun. I have quite a few friends who work in theater, and that's very difficult as well. I mean, obviously, it's harder to do a play by one person or to do costume or any sort of like stage presentation right now. So that's another industry that's having a pretty rough time.
And as an aside to our viewers, both Serge and Sherri Anne are good friends with Ingrid Hansen.
Oh no! Oh,
so
do you know
random connection there.
Really?
We lived in residence together at UVic.
What? She's like my best friend.
Friend of mine. That's so funny. I had no idea. All right. Hi. We have the same friends. What a small world.
Wow. Okay. So she just got that Canada Performs grant, and they did a live stream. So it's really cool.
I need to find this out. Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Please.
Does she have like a web page or something we can put on the chat?
It's streamed on Facebook. Snafu Dance. Let me just look it up real quick.
Yeah, so Snafu is a Vancouver-based theater organization group promotion thingy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vancouver and Victoria.
You should write dictionaries, Serge. That's awesome.
Thank you. I have a very specific vocabulary that's really unique to me.
Last show, I think I called the CFO of Huawei the cell phone daughter lady. So.
Okay, that's so funny. The Facebook is Snafu Society of Unexpected Spectacles.
Amazing.
Snafu Society of Unexpected, of course, yeah.
All right, Jared, I can't help but notice you touched your kettle. Yes. What temperature water do I want
here? Let's all bring this to 80 degrees centigrade. Thank you. See, Serge, you're hired. You're moving the conversation along. This is great. Okay, so Sherri Anne, did you get yourself a temperature variable kettle this time as well?
I sure did, and I have all three ambaris right here.
Lovely, lovely. So just so everybody knows what it is that we're drinking, we're going to be drinking 3 ambaris. We're drinking, 2 of them are pure ambari. One is an ambari by Rohini, and another one is an ambari by Sotang. So they're all from the Darjeeling region of India. The final selection here is an ambari and Fubsering, so it's 2 different cultivars. So ambari is actually it is actually kind of the most ubiquitous tea cultivar grown in the Darjeeling region. And Darjeeling is a region, so those who are watching, the region is often just thought of as only producing crimson teas or black teas, but that is not the case. They do produce quite a variety of tea, but of course, since they were set up by the British Empire back in the day, in the 1800s, they are predominantly producing crimson teas, or black teas as we call them in North America. So what we're drinking right now is technically an oolong, though. If you wanted to really understand how tea processing works, that control over the PPO enzyme to brown the leaves, and when you stop it, is in. If you let it wither until it loses 80% of its moisture before you blast the tea leaves with heat, then you're going to be into that world of crimson teas. If you were to let it go until 70% or even 60% moisture loss via that withering process, you're in the world of oolongs. So that line between an oolong and what we call a black tea in North America is a gray line. It's not really clear. It's not like a line in the sand. And so what we're drinking right now, again, is sold as a black tea, but it really is technically an oolong. Does that make sense?
I mean, I follow.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if our viewers are following, but are we following, Cher? Okay. Awesome. So okay. So again, we've talked a lot in previous shows about what the work the propyl oxidase enzyme does, and we're if you want to check out some of the previous shows to get into a little bit more detail, please do check out our YouTube channel.
Awesome.
So what I'd like to start with, guys, is I'm gonna let's go in order of how I received these. So the Sotang selection that I sent you actually managed to get out of India days before they went into lockdown.
Huh.
So this is actually a 2020 first flush Darjeeling. A really sad story is that most of the first flush leaves were not able to be harvested because of the lockdown, and it makes up something close to 70% of the revenue of the region. It's a very sought after harvest time. It's really sad that this happened. It's actually a crisis of huge proportions. We're very blessed to have got our hands on a little bit of this 2020 harvest. That being said, I'm very interested in your opinions here. It is a sad story, but we're also happy to support farmers in India to this day. We work with some really beautiful estates and some really beautiful people, and we look forward to bringing in more of their selections as the year progresses. That being said, 80 degrees centigrade, we're going to be doing 3 grams of tea, 180 grams of 80 degrees centigrade water. We're going to be setting a timer for 3 minutes. So again,
that's what I was missing.
So
okay, I have my
Are
timer.
we doing all at the same time?
Ideally, I want you to be making these back to back. We'll go Ambari by we're going to go Ambari by Rohini. Then we're going to make Ambari and Fubsering, and then we're going to end with Ambari by Sotang. Okay.
So I don't have that third one. The third one I have is Ambari by Fagu.
Okay, that is just
Me too.
So that's just written wrong. So Fagu is the name of the estate. Sotang is the name of the garden manager.
Ah, all right. So here's a question, because I've always seen you do this. I have this great little, and I imagine this is how a customer gets it when they order up your store, right?
Well, normally there would be a pouch label on it. We don't handwrite them. You guys are just getting like a sneak preview before release. So these actually haven't been released yet. They're going to be released after the show.
Scissors and I cut this as fast as I can, and I'll keep it closed with a clasp after, or am I supposed to be transferring this to a jar as quickly as possible?
Clasp is going to work for now, and then a jar when you can. So,
all right.
Now make sure for our viewers, jars, no plastic, please, but it helps to have like an inner lid if you can. But if you can't, glass jars will work. Just keep them out of UV rays. You don't want light hitting your tea.
Sorry, Jared, just for a second here.
Sure.
The smell as I open this is incredible.
Isn't it
Isn't
insane?
it unbelievable?
Oh my
I've never
God,
smelled
that
this good of tea in my
smells so
life.
good.
Yeah, there's like they call tea from this
yeah.
region the Darjeeling of tea. Sorry, the champagne of tea because of that muscat grape smell, right?
So
the
3 grams of tea, is that
yeah,
correct?
That's right.
Oh, you know what I can finally do now because I have a temperature variable kettle, which I didn't have before.
What's that?
Is I can just put the water. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I need to preheat this first. Sorry. I
Yeah.
can just put this right on. Oh, this is brilliant. I have a plan.
you have a plan.
So well.
So Sherri Anne is kind of ahead in the game, I think, in terms of we've been brewing a lot every week. So I think that are you already preheated your teapot there, Sherri?
I'm behind the game. I gotta go preheat it.
Okay. All right. So
I'm preheating as we speak.
excellent.
So here
Okay.
we go. I've got my little glass jar here. We're preheating it. Now, what's the importance for preheating, Jared?
So preheating is really going to help with thermal stability. So we have a lot more control over the temperature that we're brewing with. That means we're going to have a lot more consistency in the end product. We're going to be able to know that the difference between these teas is the difference between the teas rather than the difference between the brewing technique, if that makes sense. That makes a big difference.
Do I need to filter when we're done? I have this, not microfine sieve, but I have a sieve.
Sieves you're in a good place. If you have a sieve, like there's so many different styles of sieves. We have, here's one.
I've got like a really thick, a very large sieve.
So this is like some
But it seems
examples
to
of
work.
different sieves that one could use. Excuse this one I just used for matcha. That's kind of the middle of the road. This is one that is totally going to work. It's a little bit coarse. You could also use one of these. This is a super fine sieve meant for catching plankton. You can see like it's impossible to see through. And so different sieves are going to bring out different textures in your tea for sure. But I find that what you guys are both working with, or in this case, I have a sieve built right into the. You see that? Can you see that? Okay.
A little bit higher. Oh, sieve right in your teapot. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
And that just makes a big difference. Sorry, guys.
Okay, I have my tea ready,
Excellent. Okay.
but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait for you two before I add water. I've got my tea ready. I've got my 80°C water,
Okay.
and I've got a 3-minute starter. Give us a countdown when you're ready, friends.
Okay. Are you ready over there, Shar?
I'm ready.
Okay,
I've got my tea.
let's do
I
it.
just started brewing actually.
Okay. All right. Then me and Serge will catch up. All right, Serge. Let's do it.
Wait, 180 water?
180 water. And set go on your timer the moment the water hits the tea. So we used to tell people to wait until it was filled, but if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense at all because there's going to be different amounts of time for everybody to fill up a teapot. Whereas the moment the water hits makes more sense. It's a little bit more consistent.
Now, I don't want to brag, but I actually hit this within 1/10 of a gram.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you
Gonna
did.
throw this out there. 180.0 is what the scale says right now.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I love
wow.
those. I love those moments. Those are very
Yeah.
good moments. Okay.
When I worked in a roastery, 1 pound of coffee is 454 grams, and we had a scoop that could hold up to like 2.5 pounds. But there was this moment where if you could scoop the perfect pound, just blind, reach into the bucket of coffee, put the scoop down when it's 0 and have it 545, you just be like, oh yeah.
It's like
So good at
that's
this.
the moment of excellence. Feeling really good about it. Feel good about yourself. And we were just talking to another cafe that would likes to measure their cappuccinos, their traditional caps when they're done. And they get this, they're called Township Coffee here in town. And 177.7 is their goal. And they have like a wall of fame for people who can meet that and they once did a pour where they were like 177.6 and 177.8 or something crazy like that. It was just hilarious.
Oh,
And they were back-to-back pours. I'm making the next one at the same time, guys. I really want to like make this
you are.
at the same moment if you have the brewing capabilities to do so in terms of the amount of vessels.
My office is not in a situation. I'm going to have to go one at a time, unfortunately.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
sorry.
No, it's all
I'm
good.
not in my kitchen. I'm in my studio,
Yeah.
and I've already managed to transform it a bit. Hold on, can I change my shot so people can see what I have here?
Is that? Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
What do we
Oh
got?
God, what have I done? All right, my mic's in shot. Hold on. There we go. Look at that.
Nice. Look at that cute little table.
It works.
Wow. I think your charisma just wore off on me because I just poured it. I wasn't even looking, and I looked down, and it said exactly 3 grams on the scale.
3.0. There you go.
Yeah.
You're,
I didn't even look. It was so weird.
yeah, we flex those scale skills, says the chat.
Oh.
Yeah, we are. So somebody was mentioning they also got some 2020 First Flush from Upton Teas. I hope it was awesome. And there's some people are also wondering about what the Ambari cultivar is. Is it particular to the Darjeeling region? And I would just say that it is famously grown in the Darjeeling region. It is not limited to the Darjeeling region. It does really well in high elevations, and that's one of the reasons why it's chosen. It's also really resilient to pests, so you're not going to have as much of an issue with pest control. It also produces just a very noticeably Darjeeling-like cup. You notice that the little bit of leaf damage that you get on your Darjeelings is similar to something you might find from Oriental Beauties that you get out of Taiwan or China, and it involves a little bit of bug damage that ferments on the plant and then produces some really interesting flavor dynamics after harvest. And so that's something that we taste out of the region.
Can we talk about how amazing this smells right now?
I didn't know.
Holy moly. All right, I have another question. Am I saving these tea leaves for an additional steep, or are we doing 1 steep per tea?
Normally, I would say yes.
Wow.
Do like
Oh my-
2-3 steeps. But since we're on a timeline today, I would say no. We're going to do the next tea right after this.
What would happen if we combined them all together and made a steep with all 3 of them?
You'd actually get something that would be blended. You know, what I found is that when I combine multiple teas from the same region together, I start to get like a very consistent flavor. It does depend. I'm kind of like, but I love unique flavors, and I really like to taste a particular farm rather than taste a particular larger region. So I'm more happy buying tea from a particular farmer. And I think that's what you guys are drinking right now is really special in the tea industry. These are hand rolled leaves. So normally Darjeeling makes 300 kilogram batches at a time. They're machine separated into, say, like they'll have an SFTGFOP, which means super finest tippy golden flowery orange pico, these crazy long initials. And it's almost like a coin separator where the really big leaves are kept on the top and the tiny leaves make their way to the bottom. And you get this, like, at the bottom is like fannings, or they call it dust. And those go into tea bags, etc. But it is so interesting when you can get leaves that have been hand rolled. These are 13 kilogram batches. Jaga Silk, we were the only ones that were able to get our hands on this particular Ambari in Canada, as far as I'm aware of. It's
so good. Can you say that again? It sounded like you were saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but I think it was something.
It's super finest tippy golden flowery orange pico. SFTGFOP. And so
how did you learn to say that so fast?
Well, you'll look at a bag of tea or a box of tea, and you'll think it's a barcode, or you'll think it's like a unique ID, but it's actually a designation for a specific type of tea. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly out of India. If you were buying from Sri Lanka, they'll just differentiate between orthodox and maybe dust grade teas. You do see a little bit of like OP, which means orange pico. So orange pico is both a place on the leaf. It can also be in this coin separation style system. It can be in the stuff that's the more broken up leaves at the bottom. So it'll often be cheaper. It'll have greater surface area for extraction, so you'll get faster extractions out of it. I, though, way prefer the stuff that is, it's going to be more expensive when it's SFTGFOPs. This one is, though, not separated at all. It's a 13 kilogram. You're getting just the dust separated out a little bit, but you get such a round flavor, and it's such a unique and beautiful flavor that I think that you get as a result of not putting it through that commercial process. This is a lot more specialized, if that makes sense.
Can we talk about tasty notes here?
Yeah.
It's so mind-blowing.
Are you picking up on cotton candy here? Am I the only one smelling cotton candy in the cup?
I was gonna say more floral, but once you put that like very sweet sugar into my mind, it's there. But again, taste is very suggestive. Sorry, I talked over you, Sherri Anne.
Yeah.
No, that's I'm all ears.
What are we tasting for? Like a floral definitely comes into my head. I was saying to Sherri Anne earlier, like something like jasmine, but that didn't feel quite right.
No, I agree with that too. You're like,
okay.
it's like, what is jasmine but not jasmine? And that's why I went with a very generic floral there, in that it's something that's flowery. It's reminiscent of jasmine. It tastes a lot. What's interesting, it doesn't have a lot of initial flavor to it. It's very clean. This might be a problem with my particular extraction. I get a little bit of tannins at the very back of my mouth, at the back of my tongues.
Okay.
But the aftertaste is fantastic. It starts off slow, and then it builds and it builds, and it's sweet and it's flowery. And those are the only words I can use to describe it.
What you're missing in the go ahead.
Oh, it's probably the sweetest of the teas that I've had on this whole show. It's like, it reminds me of like if I was to be traveling and I was not feeling well, I feel like this would heal me. Like it has almost like that electrolyte feeling, that there's something in it that's medicinal. It's like my body, it's almost like thirst quenching in some weird way, but it's like almost like, oh, you know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
I know what it is. When you have an actual sugar cane, like the actual plant, and you just like bite it. Have you ever had that? They like cut it up in like Peru, and then there's all the sugar cane, and you just chew on it.
I've seen sugar cane sold at the local like sort of specialty grocer, but I've never actually bought it and cut into it.
Okay,
I'm not as
try it like fresh. It tastes a lot like that, like the best feeling.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm also picking up like apple, like kind of like an apple blossom, you know. Like if you have
that's a particular sweetness you're getting. It's always neat to start with a very general descriptor of wheat or sugar or flour, and then try and go from there, because it can be kind of alienating to be like, I taste specifically the flour of a tomato.
That's right.
And you're like, oh, all right, how did you get there? Let's go on this journey together. And if you start with, something that's very wide, like a bullseye, and then try moving a layer closer and a layer closer and a layer closer, and then you can kind of enjoy this flavor journey together, right?
Which is kind of how the tasting wheel works, right? If you look at a tasting wheel, they'll have these kind of broader genres of flavor, like floral or fruity, and then they'll break it down into some options that are maybe a little bit more specific.
Tart fruity.
Speak again?
You're like, is it sweet fruity or tart fruity?
Exactly.
Is it a berry fruit or a fleshy? Wow, words. What even is English? Or a fleshy fruit?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the two teas that are from the same year. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Is that, maybe if I hold it closer?
Oh, it's not quite appearing on camera. About 3 inches higher, Jared?
So there it is for my viewers, and there it is for you guys.
Oh, we have 2 different cameras.
We do, yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, difference in size, difference in color, very interesting.
Yeah, really, you can see how these ones on the right, my right, are rolled a little bit tighter than the ones on the left. The ones on the left are the Ambari and Fubsering, which we're about to make. And then this third one, a lot deeper withering, in that it's a browner leaf. There's less green tinges. And that particular one is the one by Sotang, or the Fagu estate. I
accidentally already made the second one.
It's all good.
For some reason I misunderstood.
No, it's all good. Yeah, let's get brewing. Now, a note is that if you want to just like save those leaves, you could always put them into a jar, add cold water, throw them into the fridge, and you could make yourself some iced tea.
Okay.
Just cold brew them overnight. They're not going to be as awesome as if you were to cold brew without first brewing a hot infusion. Like if you just use fresh leaves for your cold brew, it'll be more flavorful. But it's a nice way of being economical with your leaves, is you can do a cold infusion.
Quick question, Jared. Second steep is also the exact same measurements, 3 grams to 180 grams, 80 centigrade water?
But you'd be doing 3.5 minutes. But I'd actually like to move to the second tea, Serge, if that's possible.
Oh, I'm sorry, not second steep. I meant second tea. Yeah,
okay.
I'm just waiting for the kettle to get up to temperature.
Okay. Lovely. All right, yes. So for our viewers, a steep is just the... it's the... how many times you put water onto the same leaf. So a second steep would be if you add the leaves for a second time. Add water to the same leaves for a second time. And if you were to do that, I do suggest making room for leaf absorption. So what that means is you'd just be brewing with a little bit less water. So rather than brewing 180 grams for your second steep, there's probably about 5 to 10 grams of leaf of water absorption into the leaves. So you'd brew with 170 grams of water for your second steep. Otherwise, it can taste too watery. And I would also increase, for this one, I would increase it to 3.5 minutes for the second steep. But we're going to make all of these teas exactly the same for our first infusions. So you're going to be making the one from Sotang, the two from Rohini, exactly the same way. We're going to be doing 3 minutes, 80 degrees centigrade, 180 grams of water. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, giving a lot of people a great shot of the top of my head as I look down and work on things here.
It's all good.
Great content with your shot there, Serge. Thank you. What do you do for a living there again, Serge?
I take pictures of my forehead.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, this is so a note also on brewing temperatures. If you're working with a quote unquote black tea, what you're gonna find is that you're going to encourage yourself to use boiling water. That's going to be sort of everybody's go-to temperature for when they're making a crimson tea. But it's worthwhile to note that Darjeeling is at a very high elevation. And so as we were talking about the temperature that water boils at, it's worth noting that it's closer to 90 degrees centigrade, the temperature that water boils in Darjeeling. So when you're making a second flush Darjeeling, you want to brew it at the temperature that they would be boiling at, so 90 degrees C, not at the temperature we'd be boiling at 100 degrees. 100 degrees for a second flush Darjeeling is super bitter. It makes your tongue feel like it's drying out, like you're kind of licking sand or something, like there's a lot of tannin. And it's even worse for a first flush. And first flushes we'd always made with 90 degrees centigrade water, but they were always a little bit, I don't know, I wasn't super into them. But first flushes are so popular in Japan. And I realized something, that in Japan, they're often brewing using what they call a potto or a zojirushi. Like they actually have like a hot water plugged in, ready to go so that they can make their tea. And if you pour that water directly onto your leaves, you're working with 80 degrees centigrade water. So there's a reason why first flush Darjeelings do well in Japan. It's because the water temperature is appropriate for them. So drop your temperature down to 80 degrees, makes such a big difference for your first flush Darjeelings. 3 minutes, 1 gram per 60 mils. You can scale that up if you want. And you can brew with larger teapots, but I highly recommend not brewing too much, because I think that if you use good Darjeeling, you're paying like good coin for it. This stuff is around the $50 for 40 grams range, so it's not a cheap tea.
So I got a little bit cocky when I was talking about how good I am at scale things, and I'm off by a significant amount. I'm like 3 or 4 grams over. I'm saying I have a scale that tells me exactly how much it is, and I'm deliberately abstracting how over I am because I'm embarrassed.
4 grams. You know, I tell, and this is good for our viewers, whenever I'm doing our seminars, I tell everybody, do it, think about it as a percentage of the total. I'd be much more concerned with you being 4 grams over with your dosing of tea.
Oh, yeah. So I'm 4 grams out of 180 as opposed to 4 grams out of 3 grams, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's with tea, I like to say, give yourself 0.1, 0.2 grams of error. And with water volume, I say give yourself about 5 grams of error. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
All right, well, I'm under 5 grams of error.
I think you're in a good place. I think we're going to be okay. Yeah.
Thank you. I used to be a professional.
There you go. So clear color difference there, I'm being told. Yeah, very different. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see the liquid color too. I'm talking to the viewers here. It's like a kind of got a really, it's almost clear.
Yeah.
I find that this is a blend of the Ambari and Thubsering.
God, it's so good.
You taste the difference?
Unbelievable. It tastes even more like sugarcane.
Yeah, it's a lot. To me, that's a lot more. I'm getting a little bit more tannin over the top of my tongue. It's a very enjoyable cup. Don't get me wrong.
A little bit. I'm getting a tiny bit too.
And I'm going to tell you, this tea is held up a little bit better. 2019 harvest for these two, 2020 for the next one that we're going to do. These ones are like noticeably lacking in the umami that I was tasting when I first brought them in. So that umami just added so much to the front of the flavor as it rolled over the tongue. But we've stored them really carefully, and I don't think that they're too damaged by being this far along. And generally speaking, you can say that your Darjeelings are still fairly fresh, even 15 months in. So we're still okay. And I opened up a tin that I kind of had open for a bit, and I broke my 3-week rule. Really, once you clip open the package, you should be going through your teas within 3 weeks if you really want to protect that umami. You guys are probably tasting a better cup than me, and in retrospect, I should have opened up a fresh package so that I could taste what you guys are. Yeah. Are you tasting umami there, Serge?
So that is a flavor that people throw around a lot that I have to admit I'm not that familiar in being able to identify. Can you help me out and describe what umami tastes like?
It's like a brothiness. It's like a background sweetness that is it's actually what MSG is trying to be in a weird way.
But it's not salty, it's sweet.
It's a different it's separate from all of those. It's its own, it's like considered its own flavor. And so
flavor. Like pungent would be its own flavor. Sweet, salty.
Yeah, sweet, salty, and then you can't say it tastes umami or anything like that, but you can say that it has a lot of umami or it's lacking in umami. Right? If we're going to talk about it. But yeah, to describe the flavor, like how would you describe salty, right? Like it's
right. How would you describe sweetness? I suppose it's just a qualifier that's hard there because you can't say if it's lacking sweetness. I can't be like describe it. You're like, I don't know. It's like sweet.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So it is. So I would say that it's easier to identify when you know it's noticeably lacking. Like I like to have a matcha that is really fresh and freshly milled, and then I'll taste it, say, 3 months later, and the big difference between a freshly milled version of that same matcha is exactly that. The umami disintegrates at around the 3-month line. And so 4 months in from the mill date, a fresh open package, you're going to taste a noticeable difference between those two. One of them is going to have that richness, that umami, and one is not.
Oh, it's a richness.
Yeah.
If somebody were to describe sweetness, you could start with fruit, you could start with candy.
Yeah.
Somebody was going to talk about saltiness, they could talk about maybe fish.
Right.
Or, like French fries or something like that, potato chips. What is a good descriptor? What is in the umami flavor of tasting notes so that I can put together? Chat saying stuff like savory,
I'm seeing
mushroom, or whatever.
I think mushroomy is probably the closest from what I'm seeing in the chat here. There is actually a lot of umami in mushrooms. So if you were going to do like, I was reading about one of my favorite books in the world is the Noma, is it Noma Guide to Fermentation? Is that restaurant in Amsterdam? Noma? I think it is.
I'm not familiar.
Noma. So the Noma Guide to Fermentation is one of my favorite books ever. And they talk about doing a lactic ferment of mushrooms to bring out like a umami hit. Or when you have gyokuro, if you've ever had Japanese gyokuro before, that intense richness, that super like meaty quality is umami.
So do I get a little bit of that? I think I could get a little bit of that.
Okay.
The thing that shocks me of this tea is the sweetness and the aftertaste. The last tea seemed a lot more gentle, seemed a lot more floral. And this one goes into having this very full mouthfeel. I do get the tannins that we're talking about in the center back of my tongue. And then it just got this overall richness and fullness to it into this very, very, very sweet aftertaste.
Okay. I'm getting a dry finish in mine. But I'm getting like a really, once the dry finish disappears, there's sort of like, it makes way for a sweetness to then roll over the tongue. So it's interesting because I would normally qualify that as the finish, but I guess the finish is being split into two different flavors for me. One is like this wash of astringency, and then there's this kind of roll over the tongue of that sweetness that comes afterwards. It's like cascading waves of flavor, if that makes sense.
So I'm salivating onto a dry tongue.
Yeah.
That sounds so amazing.
They're like, are you okay? I sound like, are you experiencing the following symptoms?
Yeah.
Dry
Okay,
tongue. Like,
I have to
yes?
be honest. I gotta be completely honest. When I take a sip of this, it literally transports me to two places. One, Key West, Florida, where I met a man named the Coconut Man, and he'd sell sugarcane and he'd sell coconuts like on the docks. Two, Peru, again, like the streets, that taste of actual freshly, like seriously, just freshly chopped cane juice, and you chew on it, like it seriously tastes like that. I don't know if they're cousins or something, or if they're. I know that there's sugarcane in India, like India, that in a lot of regions, but I'm just curious if there's any kind of relation whatsoever, because it transports me there. It really does.
Yeah, I think that. Well,
It doesn't taste like sugar cane, like regular sugar, like cane juice, fresh like that.
yeah,
It's like something I've never tasted before, and this is the only thing that ever has come close.
I
interesting.
found the beautiful thing about flavor is everybody's experience is valid.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
And it's just like the way that flavor reminds you or takes you on a journey somewhere is absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite stories was sitting at a coffee tasting, and somebody's like, "Why does this remind me of grandma?" And I was like, you're gonna have to be a little bit more descriptive here. What do you mean, grandma? And they're like, well, grandma used to always make chocolate cookies, and oh my god, it tastes like chocolate. And I was like,
go. Yeah, there you go.
But some people need to connect that together, right? I honestly believe that taste is something that can be trained in people, that people aren't just naturally amazing. You can't just pick something up and be like raspberries. You're like,
I 100% agree. Like
Yeah.
I would I mean, I think it's like that with a lot of things. Like when I first started listening to bird song, I couldn't tell the difference between different birds. But then the more that I was kind of hanging out with different birds and able to identify them, I was like, oh wow, it's so interesting how much variety of song there was. This sensory input that used to be such a generic thing that was just like birds singing, period, became something so much more interesting, right? And and so much more varied. And I think the same thing with taste. The more that you taste and the more that you search to identify for flavor, and the more you taste things and then you taste something else that maybe has similar characteristics, and the more you kind of like focus on trying to pick something up, I think the more that you are able to do so. Right?
Yeah, I think the first one actually had like a tiny bit more saltiness to it. Is that weird?
Okay, maybe
I
that's
just
the
tried
umami
it.
that we're talking about. Yeah.
I just tried it again. The first one had less tannin feeling.
Second one definitely dries up my tongue way more, but also at a more noticeable location. The fact that it's like very center dryness as opposed to the back. And that's, I think, an interesting way to associate various types of acidity is where it hits you in your mouth and in your tongue, much like you're like, where does an orange affect your mouth? And that'll be like, oh, that's an orange acidity or an orange sweetness. Where does this dryness hit your mouth?
Right. And they're so different. I just, and that's how you can identify unique flavor characteristics for sure, is by making those associations. I just went back and drank the first one like Sherri Anne just did, and my goodness, that chilled well. That was a nice, like it cooled down really nicely. So that's often the sign of, the closer you get to room temperature with something, and it still tastes good or even better, is a good sign of the quality of the product for sure. If it's just gonna get more and more acidic and more uninteresting the closer it gets to room temperature, that it's not always a sign of a bad product, but I think with tea, for me anyways, that's a sign that I'm going in the right direction. And between these two, they're both top grade Darjeeling first flushes, hand rolled 10 to 13 kilogram batches. But they're to me, the first one we had when we were doing a blind cupping with the staff, I remember being like, this is like amazing. But there was like, out of 10 of us, there was, I think 3 really preferred this first one and 7 really preferred the second one. And for me, I was like really into the first one. And it turned out that the first one was a lot more expensive than the second one. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, I can taste quality or something like that. But it was interesting that there was, the silky jasmine-like, really beautiful flavor qualities that we're getting in that first one are so gentle. And then the second one is a little bit more aggressive in a good way. Like it's just got a lot more, like it's like a flavor hit. Like it just really gets your attention. and in a really positive way. Like it's got sweetness, it's got sugar, it's got those are kind of the same thing, but you know, like it's there's
They're
that
different. I get you.
that grapiness, you know. Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting how the tannin, for example, is part of the flavor structure. If I'm going to borrow from the apple cider parallels that are being brought up in the chat, are definitely different between them. Like I'm tasting almost a different quality to the tannins in the first and the second. You know, it's quite.
I'm not getting like any tannins in the first one, really.
It's very gentle for sure. I think it's there. There's a like that slight drying.
Just a little bit. Yeah, it is a little bit.
Yeah.
Which actually often happens. It's interesting how it really does border on black and green, like oolong does. Like the actual feeling of drinking it is similar to both.
Yeah, like how it makes you feel. And you often bring this up, and I think it's really good to talk about is, you know, what is not just the sensory interaction with the body, but also the physical sort of nurturing or non-nurturing interaction with the body. And there's
I think this one also has a very strong spiritual component. I'm not sure what it is. Obviously, it's hard to nail that down, but there's something that
a little bit more
spiritual.
There's kind of a cooling quality to it, I find. You know, that's similar. That reminds me of a green tea in a way. But
Sometimes I get too hot when I drink black tea.
Because it's very warming. You're supposed to drink them in the winter, and they're very warming for you, whereas green teas can be a little bit more cooling for the system. Yeah.
So this is kind of this doesn't make me really warm, you know, like black tea does. Yeah.
Well,
are we gonna do the third one?
Yes. What was that, Serge? And let's all make the third one at the same time.
Well, as a parallel or an analogy, I suppose is a better descriptive word, to your experience on like the quality or the price tag associated with tea, it seems a lot of the time the really high-end stuff is often due to complexity in the cup. And I find that in a geisha, for example, or some of those really, really, really expensive coffees.
Yes.
Where somebody can go up and they'd be like, "Oh, this coffee is $40. Is it worth it?" And the reality might be it might not be, right? Unless you just enjoy the price tag. If you don't have the experience to appreciate it, then you might just be spending more just for the experience, and that's valid. But I think when you're looking at a group of people and tasting two different things, and a lot of people point in one direction and you're alone and going a different direction, you're like, the price tag it kind of validates that. I mean, it does and it doesn't. Where am I trying to go with this? I'm trying to put a positive spin on this.
Yeah. I think
that it might not offer a more expensive thing might not offer the most popular tasting note. And sometimes a lot of people might buy it and actually not be that impressed or not tell the difference. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something wonderful in there to explore, especially as you get more experience in tasting things.
100%.
I think I saved it.
I tell people, and this is brought up again in the chat, how subjective flavor is. And I say that to people. I'm like, I used to have grades with my matcha. I would be like, this is my top grade matcha. This is my lowest grade matcha. But grades is such a judgment call, right? What is a top grade versus low? Okay, there's qualities that I'm looking for in competition that are going to set particular price points. So I can say, this is a competition grade matcha. For sure, I can say that. But doesn't necessarily mean that it's better or worse, right? And there are people that are going to drink like a gyokuro or a matcha with tons of umami, and they're going to be like, that tastes artificial to me. I'm not really tasting something that I want to taste. I want to taste something that's a little bit more, I don't know, like a little bit more... rustic maybe is a way of talking about it, right? And I find that, say, some teas that I got out of that are hand harvested out of mandokoro in Japan, they might not have as much umami, but the complexity of flavor is insane. It's so good, and they're expensive teas too. So I don't think this is really the right sort of comparison here, but definitely what makes them expensive is very different. What makes the mandokoro teas expensive is supply and demand. They only produce 18 kilograms a year, whereas normally thousands of kilograms are produced at bigger lots, right? And whereas with the more expensive matchas and gyokuros, it's all about that flavor complexity and that really intense umami flavor, right? And with these guys, these Darjeelings that we're drinking, again, so part of it is supply and demand, and part of it is the flavor complexity. But at the risk of talking too long here, guys, Longjing is a great example. Longjing is a parched green tea from China that really, I always get the second best tea of it. I whenever I'm cupping it, I always find that I don't like the pre-Qingming, a particular harvest time that's before April 15th. I don't like that selection as much as I like something that's a little bit later in the year. And the stuff that's later in the year is cheaper, which is great. And it's also what I prefer. So just because, like I'm looking for a particular style or something, but it also can come down to my brewing parameters. If I were to brew the top end Longjing differently, like I often do 80 degrees centigrade for a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and I use 1 gram per 60 mils. But if I'm going to use a top end selection for Longjing from, say, Shihu, Westlake, really what I should be doing is a lower temperature, more like 70, and I should be using 1 gram for every 30 mils, so double the dose. And I should be really working with a very small brewer, like a Gaiwan, something very tiny, and then I get more out of it. But it doesn't make sense for what I'm doing. I supply a lot of cafes, and though I break a lot of rules in that I'm not encouraging them to do 12-ounce drinks, I'm encouraging 8 ounces, and I'm really against tea bags in general. So preparing it before they bring it out, so short brew times, the ability to power a little bit larger cup, like an 8-ounce cup. An 8 ounce in North America is not large, but it is large for an origin country. That is not how you drink tea in China or in Japan. Your cup size is a lot smaller. So anyways, there's a lot of variables in play for deciding what is an ideal cup, I guess is a way of saying it. There's my long
are so difficult because we have to try and frame the conversations in a context that's approachable to the audience.
Yes.
And you make these assumptions of just like, okay, how much common ground do we have and where can we build from that, as opposed to like, I'm going to throw out a bunch of terms and just alienate everybody. And I appreciate that. I could see you, but like, I could go down this topic for 2 hours. Buckle up, let's go. We're like, no. All right.
Yeah.
Breathe. 8 ounces. That's fine. That's fine. The cafes are going to focus more on the customer as opposed to quality. I'm a business person. I can respect that. That's fine. And it's going to be great for what it is. Could it be better? Absolutely. But there are certain compromises that have to be made in terms of accessibility, in terms of customer knowledge.
Exactly.
And I love it. I love it.
So
you could.
It's a balancing act. Yes, go ahead, Sher.
Oh, you could actually, like, you have you're planning to do lyric books for your music. You could have a lyric book for tea.
A lyric book for tea, just to go in a little bit more. That's actually, I think I know where you're going with that, right? Whereas there's this sort of, there's a brief introduction that makes so much sense for so many people, but there are people out there that really want to dig a little bit deeper,
like a yoga class.
Yeah, they want to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole. And I think that being able to reach out to that interest is really important. I find in tea, a lot of tea books, a lot of tea knowledge, a lot of tea sharing is so focused on that introductory element, where you're just so focused on just like, what is Camellia sinensis, which for many people, they don't know what it is. And that's totally cool. I think we really need to answer that question. It is the tea plant. It can make white teas, green teas, yellow teas, crimson teas, blue teas, which are oolongs. Like we can go down that road, but to have that conversation over and over and over and over again is like, it's nice if you're a learner, if you're learning, to have access to some information that goes a little bit deeper. And I think on our webpage is where we're going to start doing that, is where we can be like, hey, this is the introductory questions that need to be answered, but here's something that's a little bit deeper. Look at this. The leaf shape of this Camellia sinensis plant versus this cultivar, and the temperature of the how it was finish fired, and how much of a response like I'm really interested in how the same batch of leaves can be finish fired differently to produce completely different flavor profiles at different times of year in Japan. Like, I find that so fascinating. That's so interesting, but it's definitely not a conversation that we normally have. Right, but I think there are there's more than just me that are interested in this.
No. You're preaching to the choir here, please.
Yeah. Right. I think like, and even if you're not like decades of drinking tea and tasting and stuff, I think even like when I was first starting to drink, say, red wine, there's a lot of parallels. Like when you get like the person, there's a lot of questions being put into the chat that are relating to apple cider, which is another one that I really love. But I think you can bring a lot of that tasting apparatus to different worlds and apply them to cheese, apply them to coffee, apply them to wine, apply them to just whatever, and it's
You could apply them to music even. Actually, that'd be funny. What is the tasting note of this song?
But I really
but it's like an
What?
a listening note. Oh my gosh, the listening note. Oh my, this is too.
It's so true though. Like the if you're building a flavor structure in tea and coffee and ciders and wines, you're building a sound structure with music. And if you don't have your bass tones, your high hat, your higher notes, your like if you things wash away if you put them all in the same sort of frequency. And I think that the parallels to music and sound and flavor are definitely there. I think that about this with visuals is too, when you're putting together a photograph and how you set up the composition. There's so many similarities visually with what we're trying to do with structure of flavor and structure of sound, structure of
and balance. When there's a nice balance,
I think
that's like
human beings love flavor balance and sound balance and balance everywhere. Like it's just what we get drawn to when things are out of whack, when things are in flavor, if things too salty or too sweet. We actually find them unpleasant. So yeah, I think
just like nature's obviously there's a balance in nature and the diversity that reflects to music, it reflects to tea, reflects to everything. And there's diversity and a balance. So this one is unbelievable. It's so good.
Finished steeping here.
It did finish or it didn't finish?
It just did. It just did.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of bad because I have the same reaction every time, which is like I smell.
Yeah.
And I go, oh God, and then I die a little.
Yeah.
I could provide a slightly different commentary for each tea, other than this one is also amazing. You're like, yes, Serge, they're all amazing.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But if they're all amazing, that isn't everything amazing? Is nothing amazing? You're like, well,
yeah, give me context. Yeah, it is.
So this gets me to a neat story. If you trailing for a second, sorry, go ahead, Sherri Anne.
Oh no, I was just gonna say this is. I think that I think I understand umami for the first time.
Okay. There's that savory quality. Okay. Go ahead with your story though.
So years and years ago, when I was first working as a coffee roaster and I was learning sort of to build my foundation of coffee knowledge, because we've been talking a lot about foundation and building blocks and stuff like that, I was struggling to learn how to score coffee.
Okay.
So there's something called cupping in coffee, and coffee, much like tea, is a commodity that's traded across multiple countries. There's multiple languages, and it becomes very difficult for people, especially through translations, to make sure they're communicating to each other evenly. So coffee created a scoring system where you give a number to something, and then everybody agrees on what that rating is. But that obviously requires training, and there's certain people who get their palate certified to do that. Not, but like even if you don't need to get your palate certified, it's important when you're tasting something to know, all right, is this sweetness 1 through 10? Is this flavor 1 through 10? Is the balance 1 through 10? And the issue I had was I was only ever tasting good coffee. So I didn't know what my scale was, right? Because my range of experience wasn't big enough to actually know when I was tasting something, is this a 7, an 8, or a 9? I don't know. I've never had a 2. I've never had a 5. So important. If, sometimes the best way to improve your experience is to go outside of that. And is to go, all right, let me get like the most roasted possible grocery store coffee. And let me taste that next to a very exquisite coffee by the side, and just broaden your experiences and just give yourself an actual range to work through. Yeah, so 100%. Here I am calling all these teas amazing. Are they all actually amazing? I'd like to think at this point, from knowing Jared long enough and being in the industry, I've tasted some other things that are a little bit lower. But they're in the range of experiences I've had. Yes, these are all excellent.
Awesome. So they're all tasting. No, what I'm tasting is, and thank you for that. That's very sweet words. But what I'm tasting here, and I know you mean them. You're a sincere guy, so I really appreciate it. I don't know how to quite respond, but when we're drinking tea, I think if you were to compare this 2020, it'd be interesting. This is kind of why I wanted to do this flight, is I wanted you to taste what is present in the third one that's not present in the first two. And I think there's like a rounder quality to it, but the fact that it's from a completely different estate, it kind of impinges on this whole flight. Because I think what this estate has done, and it was brought up in the comments as well, that the golden color compared to the previous ones is a lot deeper, and it's true. I think that this first flush was withered a lot further than the first two. It's a lot less green, so to speak. You're getting a lot more caramel and chocolate in this one that you weren't getting in the first ones. And I'm used to tasting sort of a lighter cacao flavor in my second flushes. So it's interesting to me that this estate has perhaps taken things a little bit further than one normally would. And so, yeah, I'm interested in that for sure.
Is there transparency in moisture content in a tea when you pick it up? Like, is that information that you could request and find out for a comparison of teas A, B, and C?
You can ask for, I mean, it depends on the facility. This particular facility, I can get that information. And it's hovering at around 4 to 5% residual moisture. So, you know, I actually, when I'm cupping teas, I don't only cup for flavor. And to touch on what you were bringing up, one of the things I like to do when I'm screening a new relationship, a new farm, a new grower, I really like them to send me a sampling of what they consider to be really low quality that they've produced, and fairly decent quality and top quality. And I really like to get that person's perspective on that, because I don't want to just work with a vendor that is only capable of producing, you know, like if it's small enough, I don't mind. You know, like I work with some vendors that only produce 80 kilograms a year. And in that sort of situation, sure, they probably only just prepare one product. But they're for a slightly larger farm. They probably have different quality spectrum, you know, and it's really interesting to taste that spectrum. Where was I going with this? So that's a way to sort of educate the palate on that vendor. But another thing that's really important to us is the transparency of information. So talking about moisture content, I also want to know soil structure. I want to know elevation. I want to know how big was the batch. I want to know that the batch number that I'm tasting is different or the same as what I'm actually going to bring in. You know, like I have had in the past where the farmer's like, oh, they're basically the same thing. And so they sent me, you know, and in one instance, I actually got sent a product that was higher quality than the one I bought before. But because the brewing parameters were so different, I couldn't buy it and sell it as the same product. And so it was really problematic for me, right? They were like, oh, I ran out of that stuff that was medium quality. Here's high quality stuff for the same price. And I was like, I need more of the medium quality stuff.
Wow.
But, you know, because there's
That's
such different
funny.
flavors. And I
Probably
often,
better if people could appreciate it, which is what we, you know, circles us back to what we were saying before, right?
yeah. Well, I often bring up that your average supermarket your average supermarket tea is sitting at around 7 years old. Because a lot of tea is
Oh my God.
the expiry date is set for 2 years from receipt of product. How often do you know the harvest date? You know, you'll see expiry dates, but what created that expiry date? You know, if the product is moving fast enough, fine. And if they're directly trading with the farms, great. But, you know, a lot of times you get like a company that's, say, fresh, new, interesting, and you taste it, and oh, the tea's really good. Second year, not as good as last year. It's the same tea. Third year, oh, that's way worse than the first year that I started drinking their tea. And it's because you don't know when it was harvested, and they all probably bought way too much so that they could sell it for a lower price. And so what we've really had to do is kind of, excuse the bell, we had to encourage people to buy more expensive tea because it was costing us more because we were flying it in directly from farmers. It would actually be less money for me to buy from another importer than to import it myself, because they can buy in way bigger quantities than I can.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
But I would rather have that more careful control over the quality and the consistency of the product, which I would lose otherwise.
Oh.
So tasting this tea specifically, I think the biggest difference I have is I don't get any tannins.
Okay.
Nowhere in my mouth do I have the same level of tongue dryness. So the first one, I had a little bit of dry at the back. The second one, very dry tongue that turned into sweetness. It was weird. That sentence again, I'm salivating, but my tongue is dry. This one just doesn't, I don't get that experience. It's lovely. It tastes great, but I'm trying to find
I get it here, right in the front of my tongue.
very tip.
Yeah, very tip of my tongue. Yeah.
I get that too.
Yeah.
I got that a little bit too, just tip of my tongue.
So there's
Just
like
on the tip of my tongue.
the first one I was tasting tannin in the finish just gently. The second one it was right in the center and on the sides. It's like you're saying a little bit more there. I might even experiment with that second one with a lower temperature entirely, like 70 degrees. I've had to do that with some first flushes, or I might drop the brew time down a little bit if I found that really like an interruption, like the flavor was so intense that it was interrupting my enjoyment. I didn't find that though. The second one I still really enjoyed, even though it had a more dominant tannin than the other two. This third one, yeah, it's also very gentle like the first one, but it's more in the front for me, and I'm getting more of the chocolate. It tastes like it was taken a little bit further along in the process. It tastes like it was cooked maybe with a hotter temperature. There's a little bit more caramelization of sugar.
Reminds me a bit of the Tenali.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, same country, completely different region, but yeah, definitely more in that direction. And the Tinali that you're bringing up, that was a crimson tea that we had before our current Kocha Asatsuyu, and that was a very bassy, very deeply withered selection from the Assam Valley. Lovely estate of Tinali. Sorry, Tinali is the cultivar. That was Latumoni was the estate, but yeah.
I guess that same. It's interesting. It reminds me more of the first tea than the second tea.
Right.
I'm getting that floralness again. I'm getting not green apple, but I'm getting like apple juice sort of flavor in here as well in terms of sweetness, but also that richness of it. And that could be somewhere in like the caramels that you're describing. I'm getting more of like an apple richness.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, I've made this tea a number of times, and I'll be honest with you guys. I've there's a woody quality in what I would call a third pulse. So there's that first pulse of flavor. There's a second sort of wraps over. There's that floral kind of champagne-y grape flavor that hits the tongue. And then right in the back, kind of 80% of your tongue, there's like a woody texture that starts to grab on.
I'm now very aware of that.
And that's always kind of made me go like, I'm not sure if I really love this tea. But I'm so blessed that I have it because it was so hard to get. And I grabbed this on the recommendation of the farmer. I
love the woody taste of tea. Like Redlands is kind of woody.
Well, what it might be is that when it's with a crimson tea, oftentimes woodiness is from under extraction. So I may try to make this tea with 90 degrees centigrade water because we're tasting that deeper, like it's a deeper withering of the tea. So it might actually help to bring out a nicer flavor to brew it at a hotter temperature. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit and before I actually release it. But this is about to be released. When I get this dialed in, we're actually going to release it on our webpage as a Darjeeling flight. So people can actually get these three products side by side and they can taste them at home. I'm also going to sell the Sotang, the 2021, as an option on its own. But and I have very little of the Ambari. I have a little bit more of the Ambari and Fubsering, and I have a lot more of the Ambari by Sotang. The Ambari by Sotang, I actually started a batch that's going of our kombucha, so we'll be able to try it. And I find that grapey, intense, perfumey flavor just punches through like there's no tomorrow. And I'm pretty excited to release that for sure. We've gone way past time, guys. I got way excited. I asked for Serge to book off like 45 minutes an hour, and here we are at an hour and 15 minutes.
This is just like going to Jaga at any time. I sit down, stop in, quick drink, and leave. You're like, how is it dark out? What year is it? Like, how long have I been here?
Exactly. So there's time flies when you're having fun. So I wanted to probably this is a good time to wrap things up a little bit, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this experience and some sort of parting comments with our viewers and just what these flavors have meant and any just sort of comments that you'd like to add. And maybe we can start with Serge if you want to.
So tasting is one of my favorite things to do. I love starting from a point of comparison so you can go outside. So the fact that they're all same country, similar processing as you mentioned, and same brew ratio was great. I'm like, I'm already on board. I liked the journey we went on the tea from 1, 2, 3. I thought the order of presentation was very neat.
Cool. Yeah.
I like that we got to on the third one there as well. In particular, like I thought probably the most interesting thing we talked about here was the deep dive into tannins.
Right.
Where in the mouth and what that reminded us of and fun stuff like that. And I think a lot of people can not enjoy tannins in tea because that's often seen as a failing to like, my tongue is dry and I don't like it. But it also teaches you a lot about what does this taste like? How did we get here? Is it woody? Is it on the sides, the front, the back, or wherever? So this was great. And
cool.
I like these teas. I like these. I like you. I like this whole experiment. So thank you for including me.
No worries. And thank you, Serge. Huge appreciation for you coming on. That comment on tannin for sure has been, it's been interesting that in the comment section, somebody was saying some tannins will linger longer, some will be harsher in the furry tongue feel you get. Some will sneak up late in the finish, and some are right there up front. I love that comment because it just reminds me of how important tannins are to flavor structure. Without them, teas taste bland. So I think we do need them. I think that oftentimes we look at bitters or tannins as something that's negative, but it's so important for building a complex flavor structure to actually have them there. So as
just a little bit.
And as tea brewers, we are curating flavors in a way that's so unique. There's a kind of a homogenous way of brewing tea that I really discourage people from doing, which is that whole 3.5 minutes, 1 teaspoon for the cup and 1 teaspoon for the pot, boiling water, old school English grandmother style of making tea. And I think that you can have some amazing tea made that way, but it's generally the basey, more developed tea leaves. And I think it's so interesting that we were able to go off the deep end with these 3 teas and really taste them for what they are, adjust brewing parameters to fit the tea, and then like you were saying, Serge, there have that homogeneous brewing style to really make it make sense side by side. So yeah, huge appreciation there. Sister Speak, if you wanted to, Sherri Anne, if you want to talk to us a little bit about what you experienced today and any comments you'd like to say in passing.
Yeah, I'm still feeling a special connection with the Ambari by Rohini.
Nice. Okay.
I think it was just so pleasant. I actually brewed the last one. I didn't brew it quite right. I accidentally steeped half the amount of water for the first minute, and then I had to add water because I was short.
Okay.
And then I oversteeped it slightly, so I had a little more tannins in the last one, but it was still amazing. It didn't ruin it. So, which means that maybe it's also like harder to ruin than some other teas.
Right. More forgiving, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, more forgiving. And I definitely tasted that sugar cane brought me down to memory lane for the first 2. And the last one was more like a going for ramen. But like in a really good way.
Yeah,
like,
fair.
Like that like epic ramen. It didn't taste like ramen. It just reminded. For some reason, teas bring memories to me. I don't know why. It's like a song, that I've known. So this tea is like new yet familiar and very comforting. And I explain taste in a weird way, but
that's awesome. I like that. The feeling of going out for ramen with some friends. That's the tasting notes we were talking about last week as well. Just like how, memories are tied up in it. So, as Serge was bringing up with grandma's cookies and how that really meant chocolate and dough, there may be a quality to the ramen. Like maybe there's that savoriness, the sort of meatiness of the umami that's in these teas that might have brought up and triggered that memory, but it could also just be the feeling of exoticness and
the comfort,
yet comfort at the same time. And so those 2 feelings. So it's an interesting way of looking at flavor, is also what it does for like how it hits your feelings when you're drinking it. There's very comforting teas. There's very playful teas. There's it's an interesting way of looking at flavor for sure.
Christmas teas.
Yeah, exactly. Tastes like Christmas. Anyway, a huge thank you to you both. I really appreciate having you on the show. Every week we have Sister Speak joining us, and that's been amazing. So thank you, Sherri Anne, for joining us weekly. Serge, again, you're my live stream sensei, and that's that's been really awesome to have you you not only show me the ropes, but to agree to come on the show. I know you're quite busy with your own projects, and I've taken even more time than expected.
No,
So
it's been a pleasure to be here.
But I encourage everybody who's watching, check out Serge on his Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Serge Yager. He's got some really fun content. He does a lot of live streaming. You can check him out. He also has a Patreon. Is your patreon.com/Serge Yager?
Yeah.
Awesome. And,
Cool.
and then he's also the fellow that shared with me what Patreon can be, which is pretty cool, and then passed along that conversation to Sherri Anne. And
Wow.
So
That you're the reason I have a Patreon, Serge.
Glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear some
Jared
success.
signed me up for it before they changed over to the new platform. He's like, you gotta, and then I launched it like last year.
You got in early. That's fantastic. Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
So,
Without both of you, I don't know where it would be right now. So thank you.
It turns out I've got a particular set of skills that are in increasing demand right now, and I'm happy to try and help out wherever I can. I know people's situations are changing, and we're all doing our best right now, and I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you to you both. Really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you.
I would look forward to next week as well. Serge, maybe you can put us on quietly to the side. You'll see next show will be with actually Jim Finlayson will be joining us. So it should be a fun show. We'll be focusing on matcha next week. We actually, as a matcha specialty company, you'd be surprised that next week will be our first episode focused on matcha. Every other week we've been doing on loose tea. So should be fun. 1 p.m. Thursday on our YouTube live. Subscribe. Help us get to 100 would be lovely. Then we can have a unique YouTube channel. For now, if you just go and search on YouTube. For Sister Speak, you want to go to patreon.com/sisterspeak. You can check her out on Instagram, Twitter. Thank you to you both. Really appreciate having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure, friend.
Awesome.
Thank you, merci.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye, friend.
Bye.
Bye.
Wonderful. Okay. So long episode today. Appreciate you all hanging in there and hopefully enjoying what was discussed. We had a really lovely time with our guests, Sister Speak and Serge Yager. Sister Speak we've been sponsoring for over 6 years, or close to 6 years. A little bit of nepotism there in that Sherri Anne is my sister. But she's does close to 200 shows a year, or she was before COVID-19 hit. Amazing project. You should check her out. 3 albums. Serge Yager, he does his Twitch channel. He's involved with Desert Bus that you want to check out. You want to go to twitch.tv/Serge Yager to find him. And thank you, Serge. I see you in the chat there. Really appreciate having you on. We've learned a lot this episode. I really enjoyed that interaction with everybody. It was really lovely to have more participants in the chat. If you can share that the channel's happening with as many folks as you can, that would be lovely. We're on again next week, 1 p.m. We'll be talking about, we'll be doing a matcha samidori blend that we actually milled quite recently. If you check it out on Instagram, I actually put a short video up about just what we were doing in terms of milling that particular selection. So go check it out. Jagasilk.com is where you'll find our webpage. If you click on the store, very soon, as soon as I can get them up, you'll see the Darjeeling flights available. The goal is today. Wish me luck. And we'll try and get those up so that you can be purchasing them by tomorrow. If you're watching the archive version of this show, I'm glad to have you watch it, and hopefully we'll see you on our next episode. Again, we're going to really try hard to make these happen every Thursday, 1 p.m. This was episode 8. Really appreciate you watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and take care.